Hello, third grade. This is Miss Scarville, and I'm about to teach you social studies. This week in social studies, we are going to look at civil rights movement. Before we begin our learning goal, I know that I am successful when I can tell how the civil rights movement changed our society, our community, and region over time. We will begin by taking a look at a brief video on what is civil rights.
The Civil War ended in 1865, and United States President Abraham Lincoln had declared that African Americans who were being held as slaves must be freed, and he outlawed slavery. But that didn't mean Black Americans were instantly treated equally in all parts of the United States. On December 1st, 1955, a young African American woman named Rosa Parks finished a long day of work in Montgomery, Alabama. She got on a crowded bus to ride home. A white man got on the bus and told her to move because he wanted her seat. Though Rosa felt this was morally wrong, he had the legal right in the southern United States to do so. She quietly said no. She was arrested and put in jail. Her brave actions gave courage to many other Black Americans in the South. Segregation, or the separation of people because of the color of their skin, was legal in the southern United States. Laws stated that African Americans, who the white Americans called colored, were not allowed to sit at the same lunch counters, drink from the same drinking fountains, use the same bathrooms, sit in the same sections at movie theaters, wait in the same waiting rooms, or sit in the same bus sections as whites. The governments of the southern states said this was legal. When the United States Supreme Court ruled that segregation was unconstitutional, meaning it went against the United States Constitution, the southern states ignored the ruling. Segregation continued. Then in 1961, freedom rides began. Buses that came from northern states would stop in southern state bus terminals. These terminals had white-only and colored-only restaurants and waiting areas. Freedom riders ignored these segregated areas. Because of this, freedom riders were often attacked, beaten, or put in jail. In Anniston, Alabama, one of the Freedom Rider buses was firebombed on Mother's Day. Those on the bus were able to escape only to be met by an angry mob that began to beat them. Freedom Riders trained for this kind of protesting. They were determined to be nonviolent and were prepared for the abuse they would receive. These Black and white Americans bravely continued to protest despite arrests. Their persistence and that of many other blacks and whites helped to bring about the Civil Rights Act that was signed into law in 1964. This law guarantees the same rights and freedoms for every American.
That was a big picture, a big look at what the civil rights movement was like in the 1960s. What was life like prior to the civil rights movement? I know most of you know that there were white and colored water fountains. There were white and colored waiting room at bus stations and at restaurants. Sometimes African Americans were not able to eat in the same restaurant as another white person. So how did life change during the Civil War movement? So African Americans, they began to protest and march peacefully during the Civil Rights movement. How did the greater society respond to the nonviolent movement? Remember, African Americans were protesting and marching, but they were doing it peacefully. So the greater society is people that went against that, what they were doing. So they were violent. They responded violently. Many whites saw movements as a mass protest, preparing violently to attack the core of society. So even though African Americans were protesting peacefully, they were still being attacked. How did the greater society respond to nonviolent movement? Through racism. Mass prejudice spread all over the nation as a mainstream culture feared in change of their lifestyle. Who characterized the nonviolent movement? Let's take a look. The first person I want you to think about is Rosa Parks. So on December 1st, 1955, Rosa refused to give up her seat in the first row of the colored section to a white man. She was jailed, and the Montgomery bus boycott began in response. So who is another person that characterized the nonviolent movement? We can say that was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a leader of the Montgomery bus boycott. He was a reverend and a gifted public speaker. He was the co-founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Dr. King believed in nonviolent and non-confrontational and peacefulness approach to racial harmony. Dr. King delivered the I Have a Dream speech during the March on Washington, D.C. These are just some images of the civil rights movement. How is life different today? Let's take a look at those pictures, and I want you to think, how is life different today in our neighborhood, in our country, overall in our state? How is life different today? Are African Americans bus being bombed? Are African Americans being beaten? And is African American being attacked by police dogs? Your assignment, scholars, you are to answer those 3 questions on the screen. It will also be posted on Canvas. What did you know? This is your prior knowledge. What did you know about the civil rights before watching this video, the beginning of our tape? You must complete the compare and contrast form, what I know and what I know afterwards. What are 2 specific things you learned from the video? And how have our community, the most important question is, how have our community changed since the civil rights movement? That is your assignments for today, scholars. If you have any questions, please reach out to your teacher for more information. Have a great day, scholars.